Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're taking a deep dive into some really cool historical documents, papal privileges.
Ah, papal privileges from 912 AD, no less.
Yeah. Issued by Pope Anastasius III. We're talking, like, formal decrees straight from the Pope.
Granting special rights, exemptions, a kind of medieval power move.
Exactly. And we've got two to unpack today.
One for Bishop Rahamberto of Vercelli in Italy.
And another for Archbishop Hoger of Hamburg.
Now, Hoger, he was a major player in spreading Christianity up north.
Okay, so we've got our sources. What's the mission here? What are we hoping to learn?
Well, for me, it's about understanding the papacy in the 10th century. How powerful were they really?
Right, and not just their power, but their reach.
Exactly. Where was their influence felt and how did they use it?
And what were the big issues of the day? What was the church worried about?
Yeah, what can we glean from these documents about the concerns of the time?
Okay, so before we jumped in, any initial thoughts? Anything that jumps out at you?
Well, the contrast between the two recipients is interesting. Vercelli, that's heartland Christian territory. Italy,
But Hamburg.
that's the frontier, the edge of the Christian world, pushing into new lands.
So you think these privileges will show us different sides of the papacy?
I think so, yeah. Different approaches for different contexts. It'll be fascinating to see how it plays out.
Okay, let's start with Bishop Rahamberto's privilege then. The Pope uses this vivid image right off the bat. Shepherds protecting their flock from wolves.
Classic imagery.
He's definitely setting up the bishop's role.
Yeah.
But how literally should we take this?
Well, there's the spiritual level, of course. Protecting the people from bad ideas, moral dangers, heresy.
Right, guiding them on the right path.
But let's not forget the early 10th century was a rough time. Lots of upheaval.
Politically, you mean?
Yeah, political instability. Viking raids were still a threat in some places.
So maybe some very real wolves out there.
Exactly. A bishop might have to deal with more than just theological debates.
Okay, so not just a metaphor then. It had real-world implications for leadership.
Absolutely. And this privilege gets into the nitty-gritty of how that leadership should look.
Like a how-to guide for being a bishop.
Kinda, yeah. And there's this fascinating tension. On one hand, they're giving Rahamberto authority symbolized by the pallium.
Wait, can you back up? What's the pallium? For those of us who,
Right, of course. It's a woolen band worn over the shoulders, kind of like a stole.
Okay, a special garment?
Yeah, and only the Pope could grant it. It showed everyone that the bishop was connected to Rome.
A symbol of authority.
Exactly. But then, and here's the tension, the privilege goes on and on about modesty. It warns Rahamberto against reckless presumption.
So he gets this symbol of power, but then they're like, don't get too big for your britches.
It's about balance. The Pope is giving authority, but he's also saying, use it responsibly. Don't let it go to your head.
Interesting. So it's not just about appearances, right? There are actual instructions on how Rahamberto should act.
Oh, absolutely. It's like a leadership manual. Keeping your cool in tough times, balancing strictness with mercy.
It even gets into specifics, right? Like
Mhm.
protecting the poor, standing up to bad guys.
Exactly. This wasn't just theoretical stuff. These were real challenges a bishop would have faced.
Trying to uphold those ideals while dealing with power-hungry nobles. Political chaos.
It must have been tricky. These instructions give us a glimpse into what a bishop's life was actually like.
Okay, so this first privilege is all about shaping a bishop's character, operating within already Christian territory. But what about Hoger in Hamburg? His privilege was totally different, right?
Night and day. Vercelli's was inward-looking, all about internal church stuff. Hamburg's is outward expansion.
The Pope talks about supporting pious devotion and bringing places of reverence to a better state, but,
But you think there's more to it?
well, yeah, giving Hoger an archbishopric, confirming his control over such a huge area.
It strengthens the church's position, maybe even pushes out other powers.
Smart move by the Pope. And talk about a huge area.
Oh, it's immense. We're talking Scandinavia Swedes, Danes, Norwegians, even Icelanders and Greenlanders.
Wow.
And then there's this line about all northern nations, however they define that back then.
Plus a big chunk of Slavic lands, too, right?
Yep. This shows just how ambitious the church was, pushing their boundaries northwards.
Which makes you wonder about the people already living there. What was it like for them?
Exactly. These documents are a window into a pivotal moment, the spread of Christianity.
The Pope's power growing.
And religion mixing with politics, all seen through the lives of these two guys, Rahamberto and Hoger.
Okay, before we get too far ahead, let's focus on Hoger's privilege specifically. What else stands out to you?
Well, there's this line that explicitly blocks other archbishops from meddling in Hamburg's business, like the one in Cologne.
So it's not just about spreading the faith, it's about controlling it too.
Yeah, consolidating power, carving up territory within the church itself, maybe?
Sounds like there could be some power struggles brewing even within the church.
Possibly. I mean, one archbishop getting more powerful could mean another one loses out.
Right, like a medieval Game of Thrones. And these documents are the clues. They show us not just the big picture, but all the human drama behind it.
Exactly. The ambition, the conflicts, the personalities, it's all there if you know how to look.
Okay, we're getting into some really interesting stuff here, but let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll dive deeper into the specifics of Hager's privilege and what it tells us about the Pope's big plans.
It's like Pope Anastasius is setting up his pieces on a chessboard, you know?
Interesting. And Hager is a key piece in that game. To make sure he's got real authority up there in Hamburg, the Pope gives him some pretty impressive stuff.
Oh, yeah. The symbols of power are definitely there. He gets the pallium, same as Bishop Remberto, that visual link back to the Pope.
That connection to Rome.
Right. But Hager also gets something extra, the mitre.
The mitre. That tall, pointy hat. Makes you look important, huh? But it's more than just a fashion statement, right? What's the deeper meaning there?
Definitely not just a hat. See, the mitre, it actually goes way back to the Roman Empire. Some Roman officials used to wear similar headwear, so when the Pope gives this to Hager...
He's connecting him to that older tradition. Like, this isn't just some local appointment. It's got centuries of history behind it.
Exactly. And as if to emphasize that, the privilege ends with a pretty serious warning. Anyone who messes with this violates the terms.
Yeah.
They're going to get cursed.
Curses all sounds very dramatic, but, I mean, did people actually take that seriously? Were they really scared of a papal curse?
You got to remember, this is the 10th century. Religion was everywhere. It was woven into every aspect of life. So a curse from the Pope, that would have been terrifying.
Right, because it wasn't just words. You're invoking God's power, right?
Right, because it added this whole other layer of weight to the legal document. It wasn't just the Pope you were messing with. It was divine authority itself.
It's a good reminder that power back then, it wasn't just about armies or politics. It was deeply tied to belief, to the spiritual realm.
Absolutely. Which brings us back to a question we've touched on a few times. The Pope's giving a lot of power to these individuals, both in places where Christianity is already strong and out on the edge where it's spreading. How is that power used? For good, for bad?
It's the big question, isn't it? On one hand, you can imagine someone like Bishop Ramberto using his influence to do what the Pope told him, protect people, uphold justice.
A good shepherd, guiding his flock. But then, power can corrupt.
Yeah, what if a bishop gets greedy? More focused on wealth than helping people.
Or uses their position to silence anyone who disagrees with them.
We've seen that happen plenty of times in history, unfortunately.
And what about Archbishop Hager? His mission was to spread the faith up north, bring those places of reverence to a better state, as the Pope put it. But what did that actually look like?
It must have been a mixed bag, right? Maybe some positive things came from it. Education, healthcare, as Christianity spread.
That's possible. But what about the people already living there? Their beliefs, their traditions?
Did they have a choice? Or was there pressure? Even violence? How did they see this new religion coming in, backed by all the power of the papacy?
Tough questions, and it's hard to get clear answers. The people who are on the receiving end of this mission, their voices are often lost to us. We might have accounts written by the missionaries.
But they're only telling one side of the story.
Exactly. So we have to read between the lines, try to understand what was really happening, recognize that there were probably many different experiences. Some people converted willingly, maybe some were forced, and others resisted.
It's like we're trying to solve a mystery, but we're missing half the clues.
And that's what makes history so interesting. It's not just about the facts, it's about the unknowns, the unanswered questions.
So as we dig into these privileges, we got to keep those bigger questions in mind. How did these documents reflect the power struggles of the time? What were the consequences, intended or unintended, of giving so much power to these bishops? And how did all of that shape history for the church and for the people living in these regions?
Great questions. And I don't think we'll find easy answers. But by looking at these documents, putting them into context, considering different points of view,
we can start to get a better picture, a more complete understanding of this period. It's like being a detective, following the clues, piecing together the evidence, and you never know what you'll find.
That's right. So let's keep investigating. We've looked at the big picture, now let's zoom in. Each privilege has little details, hints about the people involved, their motives.
Even their fears, maybe?
Could be,
Well,
for example, the language in Rahimberto's privilege. It's very personal in places. The Pope isn't just giving orders, he's offering advice, encouragement, even warnings, almost like he's writing to a friend.
it's more than just a formal document then.
Right. It makes you wonder about their relationship. Did all papal privileges have this personal touch? Or was there something special between Anastasius and Rahimberto?
That's a good question. Maybe we need to dig deeper into their correspondence or something. It's like we're peeling back layers of history, right? Uncovering not just the big events, but the human stories behind them.
And those little details can tell us a lot about why people did what they did. Like the part about modesty in Rahimberto's privilege, why all the emphasis on that.
It makes me think about the Pope's power. Maybe he was worried Rahimberto was getting a little too ambitious. Needed to be reminded who's really in charge.
Could be. Or maybe it was a general concern, something the Pope wanted to emphasize to all bishops. Don't let power go to your head. Stay humble.
Interesting. So even in this document that's supposed to be about granting privilege, you can see the Pope asserting his own power, right? Making sure everyone knows where the ultimate authority lies.
Absolutely. And this all ties back into the political situation in the 10th century. The papacy was dealing with a lot. Challenges from secular rulers, fights within the church, the constant threat of heresy.
It makes you wonder how much of these papal privileges was about genuine religious leadership and how much was about politics, about control, making sure the church stayed on top in a world that was becoming more and more fragmented.
A question worth thinking about, and one that we'll keep exploring as we look closer at Hogar's privilege and the challenges of spreading Christianity up north.
It feels like we've only scratched the surface here. So many questions, so much more to uncover.
That's the fun of history, isn't it? It's an
Oh.
ongoing conversation. We're always discovering new things, reinterpreting the past.
These privileges, they give us a peek into that conversation, a chance to connect with the past.
To learn from it, to see how the decisions of these individuals centuries ago still have ripples today.
All right, let's keep digging. We've explored Rahimberto's privilege. Now it's time to turn our attention to Archbishop Hogar and his mission to bring Christianity to the north. What challenges did he face? How did he use the power the Pope gave him? And what can we learn from his story about the enduring legacy of the papacy, the complexities of power and faith, and the ever-evolving relationship between religion and society? Stick with us as we delve deeper into this fascinating chapter of history. We've covered a lot of ground with these papal privileges from 912 AD, one for Bishop Rahimberto focusing on leadership in well-established Christian areas, and the other for Archbishop Hogar, who was given the job of expanding the church up north. It's amazing how different they are. Even though they were issued by the same pope in the same year, they show us different priorities, different challenges.
It really shows how complicated the 10th century was. The papacy wasn't some simple machine just giving orders from Rome. They had to adapt, use different strategies depending on the situation.
And the situations were definitely different. We talked about how power could be misused, even in places where Christianity was already strong. But with Hogar's mission, going into new territories, places with their own beliefs, their own leaders, well, the potential for conflict, for things to go wrong, seems even bigger.
Oh, for sure. Imagine you're living in Scandinavia or those Slavic lands, those northern nations the privilege mentions. Your people have their own traditions, their own ways of seeing the world. And then this archbishop shows up, says he's got the one true faith, and he's backed by the Pope, no less. How would you react to that?
It's hard to say. Some people might be curious, open to new ideas, but
Skeptical, resistant.
yeah, they might even see it as a threat. Like, this guy's coming in to disrupt our whole way of life.
And we have to remember the power dynamics here. Hogar isn't just some guy with an idea. He's representing a powerful institution. The privilege gives him authority over this vast territory. Even says other archbishops can't interfere. That's a lot of power.
How did he use that power, I wonder? Was it about forcing people to convert? Maybe promising good things if they joined, or threatening bad things if they didn't? Or was there a real attempt to understand the people there, to make Christianity fit with their lives?
It's tough to say for sure. History doesn't always give us easy answers. A lot of the time, the voices of the people who were being converted, they're lost. We might have accounts written by the missionaries, the people like Hogar.
But they're only telling one side of the story.
Exactly. So we have to kind of read between the lines, try to figure out what was really going on. It's very likely there were lots of different experiences. Some people might have genuinely converted, some might have felt pressured, and others might have resisted completely.
Like trying to solve a puzzle when half the pieces are missing.
And that's what makes history so fascinating, right? It's not just about the facts we know, it's about the questions, the mysteries.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I think we're left with more questions than answers. But I think that's a good thing. It means we're really engaging with the material. We've gotten a glimpse into the power of the papacy back in the 10th century, seeing how leadership worked both in the heart of Christianity and on the frontiers. And we've seen how religion, politics, and culture all mix together in really complicated ways.
And it reminds us that history isn't just something that happened a long time ago. It's still shaping our world today, even if we don't realize it. These privileges, those little details about the people involved, the choices they made, it's a way for us to connect with the past, to learn from it.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you learned something new, maybe even started asking some new questions of your own. And that's really what it's all about, keeping that curiosity alive, questioning what we think we know, and realizing that history is full of surprises.